Pittsburgh sports! All right. Good evening from sunny Monroeville. I'm here with Gary Beer Nuts Kin, Chris the Angry Carrot Fletcher.
I have nothing.
And I'm Dave Sparkle Farts Finoli.
Paid to see that.
How you doing tonight, guys?
All right, how you doing, Sparkle Farts?
Oh my gosh! Well, I've officially turned over my baseball watching to 100% Cleveland Indians. I guess Chris Archer has just left the field injured tonight. Yeah. So,
well, on the bright side, he didn't give up any home runs. So,
what kind? I'm curious. What kind?
I don't know.
He just left injured. Okay.
He called the trainer over and walked off the field. You know, maybe it's an AB type of injury. Maybe he decided to put his feet in the freezer last night.
You know, you've hit the apocalypse when Stephen A. Smith is saying this has become an absolute circus. You know you've hit the apocalypse.
And it has.
It has.
It has. I mean, HBO has to be licking their chops at this point.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
It's gold, Jerry. It's gold.
I guess so.
This stuff is
I think you're going to lose. I think if you spend too much time on that, you're going to lose the hardcore football people that would watch it, though. I do.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, I in watching the game last night, is just another heartless effort. Right now, they're playing 200 ball. They're on pace to beat the all-time worst after All-Star game in the history of the game, which I believe it was the 35 or 36 Boston Braves who played at a 214 clip. Right now, we're playing at 200. And I'm not sure.
Low hollow ground. Yeah.
It's going to get better. I mean, we could, if you know, like an economic forecaster, I think we can be Pittsburgh forecasters for the future. And my friends, we're gearing up to what could be the 1980s in Pittsburgh sports, which you think about the unequaled success of Pittsburgh sports since the 90s. We haven't seen what potentially could come up for too long. And it's frustrating from a baseball standpoint. If you look at that lineup, you have potential. And, I mean, you have Josh Bell still leading the league in doubles and homers. Newman, I think, is going to be your best defensive second baseman, probably since the lean era. You know, you hope. And I see enough of Cole Tucker that I think he can be an effective major league player, a 250 shortstop, but he's going to, you know, he's going to be a good defensive shortstop. Brian Hayes, 2 years in a row, has won the minor league Gold Glove Award. He's a spectacular defensive player. Hasn't shown much offensively, but he's shown a little power the second half of the season. So right now you have what could be the best defensive infield in ages in Pittsburgh. I mean, you have Reynolds, you have Martin, you have Marte, who's having a fine season. I mean, even Polanco in that mix. So there is potential offensively, which is what pisses you off more than anything else, is the way they're just kind of hiding and going forth. But what's going to kill this team is you have a bunch of number 4 and 5 pitchers, and you got your only number 1 out for another year. Not sure why it took 3 months. There could be a reason, but, you know, wouldn't that have been nice had they taken care of this when it first happened? But again, I'm not a doctor. I play one on this show, but you know, it's just a frustrating thing. But more than anything else is Huntington's approach of hoping he can find a Lariano, a Volquez, a J.A. Happ. You're you're telling us you're going to go into the off season looking in the dumpster and trying to, reincarnate somebody to their past being. Again, did a great job with those three, but odds are you're not going to continually do this. That's what frustrates the heck out of me, because there is no pitching coming up. There's no pitching in the minor leagues that is going to be anything brilliant out there. Keller's got a shot, but they don't have a good track record of, as we've talked about several times, they don't have a good track record of developing pitchers, and they already, seem to have his head up his ass, the guy who was once a number in the top 20 in all major league prospects. You have that. I got my sporting or hockey news preview the other day. They have the Penguins out of the playoffs. Again, I tend to think they might react a little better in that situation, but you're getting older. At some point, Malkin looked like he had regressed last year. Can he come back? It's a lot tougher to do when you're getting to your mid-30s. The defense still, to me, doesn't look like a defense that scares you, that's a responsible defense. Maybe you're a little more responsible in the offensive end this year. You don't have Kessel, if you believe the reports, bringing Malkin down. So maybe improve a little there, but the potential is there that this team might not make the playoffs. And where I think we all think the Steelers can do a 10-6 this year and make the playoffs, this could be the last. Ben did show signs of age last year. That was evident, and people aren't talking about that. They're just assuming without AB in the mix, he's going to have something to prove and have a career year, which is possible, but it's also possible that the Ben we saw last year continues a downward trend. If that happens, this defense, which I think is going to be the key to this team this year, might not be good enough to carry a guy who's forcing things that he's not able to force. So, my friends, I'm going to throw it out here. The winningest potential team, maybe not this year, but starting next year, strangely enough, could be your Duquesne Dukes. How does that make you feel? All right. Well, we'll go to you. How does that make you feel there?
Well, I think, this year with, Crawford's gone. Nahari Crawford's gone. Big loss. Threat on the outside. But, Kellen, what's the big receiver's last name? Number 5. Kellen, the
Schuster.
For the Dukes. He's back.
Yeah.
Carr is back. Hines is getting a lot of press about being a possible NFL prospect.
Right.
And a lot of the defensive starters are back. So the schedule this year is actually a lot easier. We don't have Massachusetts and we don't have Hawaii on it. The only real significant Division I opponent you have, I guess I'm not sure if New Hampshire is, but the only real Division I opponent you have is Youngstown, which is obviously a pretty good football program, but they're beatable.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think I'm not sure they'll get the press out there that they probably should. Because it's FCS football. But I agree. They have a very good chance to go like a 9-2, 10-1 easily, to my mind.
Yeah.
I think in terms of Pittsburgh in general, I think it's a lot harder in the ACC, but I thought both Pitt basketball and Pitt football made big strides last year.
Right.
And I honestly think both of them could continue to make them this year. Now, of course, all this is qualified by injuries and stuff like that. But I think pro sports wise, the Pirates are very hard to predict. I couldn't agree with you more, Dave. I'm not sure what the catching situation is. I don't like hearing. I know these guys are babies today, I hate to say it, but you don't like hearing so many pitchers saying, I don't like pitching to Diaz. I want to pitch to Stallings. There's something there that bothers me. He was represented to be a pretty good defensive catcher. He'd give you a little bit of offense. But if the pitchers are saying that, something's not right there. Yeah. And it could be ego, but that bothers me. Stallings is a big dude. He can catch a lot of games. I'm not sure how much he's going to hit. So, that position to me is a question mark. Right. As popular as Sorelli was, with all these injuries and stuff, I think he's a foregone conclusion now. To me, maybe he has to be there because he's under contract. I don't know, but he's not a factor.
Contract's up at the end of the season, so they can shed.
He's not a factor anymore to me. It sounds cold, but we got to move on. But, I think really impressed by Newman. People didn't think he would hit. He's hit. He can play shortstop and second base. He's pretty good. He's pretty good hitter in today's day and age. He knows how to work the count, take a lot of pitches, get himself in the right situation. Couldn't be happier with him.
Right.
Bell's really tailed off, but I think he's a big time player. Okay there. Moran, I don't know. Sometimes I think, yep, we'll be a regular player. And then sometimes I say, no, there's a whole month you hit the ball in the park once. Left-hand hitter in that ballpark. So, I think he's a guy I want on my roster, but I'm not quite sure he's going to give people as much as they thought.
And I think they have him destined to utility play next year.
And I think at that role, I think he'd actually be pretty damn good. Yeah. Maybe we'll get an at-bat out of Chisenhall this year, but I could see Moran being that kind of player. Yeah. I think Frazier's the same thing to me. There's a lot to like about Frazier. He can run the bases. He can play a lot of positions, but playing regularly, I'm not sure how I feel about that. And I think you're right. I think you've got to give Tucker the chance. Tucker strikes out way too much, but all modern players do. But I think he can catch the ball. I think, if he hits 250, 260, you're probably happy if you're getting decent pitching. As much as we've criticized Marte, and he certainly falls asleep half the time and his base running is bad, he's had a pretty good year again, though, when you look at it.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm kind of glad they didn't get rid of him, to tell you the truth. And I think that outfield has a lot of chance to be really good. If Reynolds is in there, he's in there, and Polanco can come back somewhat healthy. That could be really good. But I think there's a part to me, and I'm not a big guy to say fire the manager, but I don't know which one of us said this a couple weeks ago. You go 4-22, and you're in this kind of situation, something's got to change. I'm sorry. And honestly, I think you got to change a pitching coach we all talked about how they can't develop young pitchers. But these guys now, you're going to have a slip back with young pitchers, so I'm not terribly surprised that Musgrove and Williams have slipped back a little bit. The league's seen them a little bit more, but they've been really bad too. You need a different voice in there to me, and I think they got to look at that. Now, the trouble is they're not that deep. Even if Keller is the real deal, it's not a real deep staff now until you get to Vasquez in particular. Crick's been pretty good, but we need a couple more. You need a couple more starters to compete, and I think you got a few holes in both the infield and behind the plate that I don't think they're going to be I don't think they're going to be this bad, but I'm not really sure they're going to be able to compete with some of the top teams in the National League anytime soon either.
No.
And you're right. It's one thing if you're the Dodgers and you're bargain basement fishing, but you already got a $200 million payroll. It's another thing if you're the Pirates doing it.
Yeah.
And, you got to make the right decisions. You can't just gamble on somebody like that. This isn't Moneyball, despite the glorification of the A's in that movie, which to me I still have an issue with.
You got to do it smarter. That's for sure.
That's right. So, but I don't think the Steelers are going to be. I think the Steelers are probably running the risk of kind of being in the middle of the pack too. Again, I have to look at the schedule. I do think Roethlisberger's shown some signs of age. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jim McMahon. He's taken a lot of punishment over his career. Staying in a pocket, getting hammered to make a play. That does catch up with you quickly sometimes. Don't as much as Brown was a distraction, they don't have that outside speed. At least it doesn't appear that way yet.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't bode well for him going long term. But I don't think they're going to be particularly. I think we're going to be in for a period of a lot of kind of middle of the road. I think the Pirates will rebound a little bit. Much as I hate to say it, because they're my favorite team out there, is the Penguins. I think they're probably due for a little bit of a slip back. I still think we only got two lines. If you fill those lines with, forwards that can score. Crosby and Gensel, teams have a tough time defending them. Malkin's got to play 10 times better. He's got to grow up a little bit again. He's kind of reverted back to some of the 2011-12 behavior. He's got to grow up again. Got to get him a winger that can score. I mean, he was effective because he had Kessel. Whether you like Kessel or not, teams had to defend against him. I guess they're going to try Rust or somebody, but I'm not sure beyond those two lines, despite their moves in the offseason, they really have changed all that much. And the top 4 defensemen I'm okay with. I mean, I think Letang's slipping, but as long as he with Dumoulin are okay. Pedersen showed an awful lot. He's probably going to play, I guess, with Schultz. But beyond that, I mean, I do like what they were thinking. I think the league's changing. There's a big article in the Hockey News, the recent Hockey News that's out, about what I've said for a while now. It's nice to talk about all this speed and skill, but you need some big defensive pairs, at least that are long and can stretch their arms out, and some big wingers to grind teams down. Trotman and Goodbranson played pretty well, but they only did it for 6 weeks. And both of these guys have been, Trotman was in the AHL forever, and Goodbranson was let go by 2 teams that really have floundered, Vancouver and Florida. So, I mean, if they can play like they did in 6 weeks, great, but who knows if that's the case. And as much as I love Murray, he's got to make some improvements. I mean, he has trouble catching the puck still. Even though he was great in the second half, he still has trouble catching the puck on the glove-hand side, and he can't find the puck on the ice. There's a lot of question marks around the Penguins. I mean, I'm not sure they're out of the playoffs, but they're certainly on the cusp now. So I think we're in for a period of kind of average mediocrity. I don't think we're in for a period of the 80s quite that far, Dave, but average mediocrity. That's that,
and that can be as frustrating. But it was actually the Dukes basketball team that I was talking about. I think football will be fine, but I think the Dukes basketball, in a strange way, could end up the premier team in a year or two.
Yep.
Fletch, what are you thinking?
Well, guys, I mean, first of all, let me apologize for all the technical difficulties on my end tonight. That was ugly. The Bucks need to rebuild. Any team that goes 7-27, they're probably not going to be good in the near future. And we know that. And I'm not even ready to say that Huntington's a bad GM. Don't forget, this is the guy who turned an aging Andrew McCutcheon, an impending free agent and Martin Melanson, and an ineffective Tony Watson into Brian Reynolds, Felipe Vasquez, and O'Neal Cruz. I mean, he did a good job there.
Agreed.
To me, you need to really look at overhauling the whole thing and ask, how are we developing guys? With this team, Huntington has significant financial constraints where he can't keep up with teams like the Dodgers, as you mentioned, Gary. But when you have a team that picks high in the draft and continues every year to draft poorly, you have to ask yourself, are people's jobs on the line? And I think in my prediction later in the next show, I'll be talking about that a little bit. Yeah. But, if you're going to spend money at the major league level, you've got to be good at other places. And there are teams that have been able to do this, but the Pirates are not one of them. Farm system isn't good enough. They've missed on way, 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 way too many players. And, I don't see this changing, Dave. I think we're in for some rough times here. This isn't like 2012 when the Pirates were rolling before this year was really the granddaddy of all collapses. Yeah. Huntington likes to point out that team went into July and even into August in contention, and then in September they were 6-21, but then rebounded the next year to win 94 games.
But that's
not the same team.
No.
I mean, that team had better starting pitching. It had an actual bullpen. Prepare for another bad year. And here's the thing that just boggles my mind about that. Despite all that bad baseball of late, they're actually up 1,300 a game at the gate
in attendance.
Here's the problem with that. Just in the pure economics of that translates to $3 million, maybe $4 million bucks in revenue for nutting. So why should he change? What's the motivation there? I don't see it.
And that's the thing. And the thing is, you mentioned about the farm system is the fact they are spending the maximum they can on it. So it's not like they're getting cheap there. They're just ineffective. And that's the bothersome part. It's not like if they spend more money in Latin America and on the draft, they'll be better because they're spending what they're allotted. So it's all in scout. I mean, either these guys aren't that good that they're drafting and signing, or they have a poor development system, or more than likely a little of both.
Combination, I would think. As for the Steelers, I'm not ready to close that window yet. I think they've got a couple more years. Hopefully that Mr. August, Mr. Washington will show up for the entire season this year and help Juju a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think they have enough weapons. Where I'm excited is what I've seen what they've done on the defense in the offseason. So I think they're going to contend at least this year, maybe one more year. Ben is showing signs of age. He should. I mean, he's been in the league a while. He's taken, as Garrett said, he's taken his share of hits. They need to be more effective in getting their ground game going, especially later in the year, and being able to control the game and keep their defense off the field. Penguins, guys, I'm not sure about. And, as much as I agree with the move to let Fleury go as a money move as opposed to keeping him and Murray both, Murray's play does have to improve. Murray's never been a guy who's stolen a series in the playoffs, and he's played well enough to win 2 Stanley Cups, and we have to give him his props for that. But I don't know that he ever stole any of those games. I think it was he kept them in them, and he played well enough to win. But he's not that type of guy who could potentially turn a series around.
No. And in the collegiate end, I think Narduzzi has recruited well enough to defensively to keep that team at the 7-8 win, but they're not going to be competing for ACC title. I mean, they may win the Coastal on a fluke, but Miami appears to have made the moves to put them back as a top 10, top 15 program.
Well, the landscape's changed, Dave. I mean, it's not like it was before when Pennsylvania was such a fertile recruiting ground. It's not that way anymore. I mean, it used to be it was Pennsylvania, Texas, New York, and Florida. Now I don't know that Pennsylvania is really sending that many great college athletes.
I think they're improving. I think they're right at the edge of the top 5, but it doesn't matter because you can't keep the stars in town. I mean, They're going all over the country. Kid from Gateway is a top recruit. Alabama's offered him. What chance does Pitt have to keep him here? I mean, and again, I think they probably do the right mix of athletics and academics, so it's hard to criticize them. But I don't see them as a team that can take over the city. I mean, the mix for them to do it right is the Steelers having a bad year and them having a good year at the same time where they can steal some fans. That, to me, is what they need to happen, at least to make Heinz Field exciting enough to recruits to keep them in there. But it's going to be tough for – I think they're going to be a winning team. I just don't think they're going to be anything more than they are now, a 7-8 win year team. A good year, they'll get in there with 9. I think Capel will get Pitt basketball back at one point, but it's going to be difficult because it's ACC basketball. So it's not as easy as Duquesne has in a down A10 to make strides as they appear to have done.
Well, the other thing that Pitt has really lost by moving out of the Big East is that whole New York recruiting base that Jamie Dixon mined so well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, you look down at what Dambrod has this year. Save the fact they are officially now going to play most of their games in LaRoche, at least the non-conference games, instead of PPG. I'm hoping that the majority of the A10 games are going to be at PPG. But, I mean, you got Sincere Carey, who apparently was a wild man on this recent trip. I think they were in the Bahamas. And just in his second year, healthy, should just be that much better a guard. Dunn Martin was exciting as hell. 6th man of the year in the A10 last year. Frankie Hughes is just a great marksman from three-point lane, and you'll see more from him. Lamar Norman, who was rumored to be leaving Duquesne, turned it on at the end of the year, played wonderful and stuck with it. I mean, you run about 10, 11 deep. Michael Hughes, is going to make the missing of Williams, a lot less of an issue. Williams, if you look at what he did, scored 40 points one game, scored in the 30s one game, scored in the 20s quite a few games, and he ended up with an average of 14 points a game. That means to me you were dealing with a guy who was inconsistent as hell.
And he was in and out consistent in terms of play, just the team.
Yeah.
You had to bench him a couple times. I mean, it was something, you're clearly at issue there. So.
Oh, absolutely. But you have such depth. And Maceo Austin is probably the best recruit you have had. I believe he was at Kennedy Classic.
He was.
But this is the best recruit you have had in decades. And again, supposedly, I know it was against not the top competition, but a lot of these guys can come in their first couple opportunities and kind of shrink a little. But this guy apparently played very well in that Bahamas trip. So you have depth this year that you haven't had. And James Ellis, who sat out the freshman year, is the guy that I think he's 6'11". But here's a guy who people have been talking about on the side could make the biggest difference in this team. So,
and is Rochoff going to miss time because of that injury? I mean, he is 6'11".
He should be back at some point.
He showed some, ability to contribute as well in the first.
Yeah. And yeah, you were right. And I mean, he needs a little TLC, but I think he'll be back towards the second half of the season. But
I mean, they're big, they got good guards, and they're well coached. I mean, that's kind of what you need in college basketball.
Right.
And guys, let's not forget about the women's team.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a lot more consistent success over a longer period.
And talk about having a hell of a coach.
Dan Burke is the most successful coach most successful collegiate coach, at least, in the city.
I mean, they've been a second stepsister for a long time in the press out there. You would hope the press kind of notices these things. If they do what they could on the men's side and the women's side, you hope to get a little more press. Yeah. Quite frankly, that could be. And honestly, combined with football, this might be the best Duquesne University period we've had in 25 years.
Well, and that's the weird part about what I see coming up is who would have thought that's where the most success could happen. And you're right, Gary. I mean, football, when you're ranked in a northeastern
in the country by a major publication,
and you're in the Northeast, which those teams don't spend the money on football.
Right.
They just it's weird that they won a game like. I mean, it doesn't happen often. The two or three conferences. I think the Pioneer, the Northeast, and I forget the third, but there are three conferences that are like that. Rarely win a game in the playoffs, and I think that's kind of a neat thing. I don't think they'll end up there, and they'll be lucky to win a first-round game, which I think they will go. But, I mean, with the press, they could get players going forward that could eventually make this program that good.
Dave, there's a team that I'm surprised you're not talking about.
The Pittsburgh Riverhounds.
Yes, sir. A stalker man like yourself.
They're on fire right now. I mean, they beat the New York Red Bulls, the MLS's minor league team in there, and they were the best team in the league, and they beat them 2-1 at New York in a great game. Now they lost to North Carolina this last week 5-0, but they were a player down most of the game, and they just kind of folded up. But that is absolutely, you're right, Fletch. That's a team that right now, to me, we don't play the West because I guess it'd be too cost to travel out there, but we don't play the West, so I don't know how they're going to rate up to the Riverhounds. But right now, they're playing the best soccer in the East, even though they're in fourth place now. But I mean, they played a couple of less games than the others.
Well, the nice thing is, too, that facility is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And that could be expanded if need be, if you want to move on. I think that might be a plan. And they're talking about women's soccer there, too. So see what happens.
And that's exactly where I would push right now. I mean, to me, the women's league could be the most successful women's league in the country if they would market it right and get it in bigger markets.
Yeah. You're going to do it now, certainly the time.
And right now, I would think Pittsburgh would struggle as an MLS city. I think they have growing fans, but I'm not sure they have enough to put 19 or 20,000 into a stadium every week, which the MLS averages 21, 22,000 a game. But
well, you guys live there, and a question about that. I mean, I think, Dave, you and I have talked about the Union drawing well. One of the reasons is because the city's 6.6 million people, and it draws a lot of people from other countries.
Right.
Because it's so huge. Is that the case in Pittsburgh? Because to me, that's still a big part of the MLS's success.
It's just not that they've – I mean, a lot of those cities that they're bringing into the MLS had great success drawing 15, 20,000 a game in this league.
Okay.
So Pittsburgh is just starting to put like 80% into that place. I mean, it's a 5,000-seat stadium, and you're right, Fletch. It was built with the intention of making it a 19,000-seat stadium. And if Dan Rooney still was alive, I'd say they have a 50-50 shot of being in the MLS because he was their biggest fan of getting an MLS team into the city. He loves soccer.
Well, here's the other problem, guys. I don't know that there's enough sponsorship dollars here in town.
Yeah.
Pirates with the Steelers, with the Penguins.
Yeah.
I just don't know that there's that could be a successful run. Although, I mean, as the tech sector continues to grow here, I mean, that's you look at Seattle, and Portland. A lot of their success has been based upon the younger, more soccer-friendly, more soccer.
No question about it. That's kind of my question as well. That and the international influence, I think.
Yeah, and that's who's taking fans away from baseball more than anything because they're really in competition with baseball more than any other sport in this country.
Well, I think baseball's taking fans away from baseball.
But
it's just
yep.
Well, no, I'm not going to talk about that because that's going to be my subject in our next show. So Well,
let me just say this part of it. This week, when Lou Piniella and Goose Gossage come out both saying that the game is unwatchable, you got a problem.
Yeah, you do.
Problem, but soccer is where you're losing that fan, and it's because you're basically screwing up left and right and not thinking about what's best for the game.
Right.
You're thinking about quick fixes because you're convinced it's all about length of the game, which that's part of it, sure. But there are ways to cut that down that you're not even addressing because you're afraid to irritate the advertisers. I mean, screen in soccer, and they do it in tennis, they do it in golf, they do it in auto racing. Screen on screen advertising.
Yeah.
I think that's a smart thing to do in baseball while you're lessening. And you know what? If the union has a problem with sticking people in the batter's box and having a pitch in 20 seconds.
Too bad.
At this time, the union is as much killing the game as owners who don't understand what's causing the issue.
Always has. Yep. I think it always has, in baseball especially.
But they need to be very afraid of the MLS. Because that is just it's captivated that generation, the generation they covet, and so you're not figuring out ways to get that generation to baseball, but you're also pissing off the people that are watching it. And I'm sorry, I'm in my 50s, but you know what? I still buy your damn product, and I still see your advertisers. So don't piss with me because we're your base right now.
I've said it for years. That's exactly right. Appeal to the people. Hockey's the same thing. When I go to these Flower games, they're blasting music so loud, my ears are bleeding. All this shit shooting T-shirts in the stands like a minor league game. What about the people who are paying the freight? It's all of us that are 48 or older.
Right.
I mean, you got to take that into account. But, I mean, I don't know. We could talk about the baseball thing. I mean, I think it's just amazing to me. It's funny, and this is the last point I'll make about it because we're running out of time here at the moment. But the Phillies now, believe it or not, even though they're selling all these tickets, have gone to one of these goofy, just pay a flat fee now in September because they didn't sell a lot of tickets because they've been such a disappointment. Just pay a flat fee and you can get in.
Yeah.
Somebody who buys the season ticket plan said to me, you know what, I'm royally annoyed. I mean, I paid all this money in the beginning of the year, and now what you do is you go and discount. Like, it doesn't seem – they cannot make a decision that's the right one, it seems, on any front, whether it's from the club standpoint, on the field, or whatever. But it's actually annoyed a lot of people here that paid all this money because they signed Harper this ridiculous contract. all this kind of stuff. They expect they're going to win. People got into the hype. Now they're giving away, just pay like X dollars, you can get in any of the games in September.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Oakland's been doing that for about 2 years.
You're alienating the people who supported you from the beginning when you do stuff like that.
Well, that's just to bring us full circle of what we were talking about. I think the other problem that we have as Pittsburgh sports fans is that we're spoiled. I mean, we enjoyed so much success in the 70s, and that we expect our teams every year are going to be in contention, and that's not how it works. It's really, I mean, all of these leagues are set up for parity in one way or another.
Yep.
Baseball, most of all, because it seems that there are two different strata that you're dealing with. But for the Steelers and the Penguins both to have such sustained excellence is pretty incredible. I mean, the Penguins, I believe, have the longest consecutive playoff streak. Am I wrong?
They do.
You're absolutely right.
They do in the whole NHL, and it's one of the smallest cities in the league still. Other than a few Canadian ones, it's still one of the smallest cities in the league.
So, guys,
it's amazing, and you're right on the money, Chris.
We have to accept that there are going to be down years from time to time.
Yep.
The thing we just don't want is what happened with the Pirates when we had 20 of those in a row. That's what we can't have.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And out of the three professional teams, I think the Steelers are probably set up maybe to have a couple, as you said, Fletch, mid-years. But I think if they got the defense as good as I think they have, the down years won't hurt as much with them.
No, I agree.
And with the salary cap, I mean, look at Colorado. Look at some of the other teams that were down. They were down for a very short period of time because salary caps allow you the flexibility to come back quickly if you're willing to spend the money, and the Penguins are willing to spend the money.
In hockey, you only need a couple players to really change the tune. Remember what Hagelin and Daly did?
Yeah, that's right.
It became a speed game. I mean, you just need a couple players to change the tune, too. A little easier than it is in football, I think, or baseball.
Well, gentlemen, let's hope we're wrong on this. Let's hope it's kind of a mediocre time, but let's also look forward to our alma mater being the leader.
Shoo shoo rah rah, bitches,
and bring back Marcy.
You have a good night.
You too.